Okay, in honor of No Nuanced November, let's talk about why Addams Family Values is the best Thanksgiving film of all time. A Tale in Three Parts. 1. Charles Addams. Charles Addams was an American cartoonist who worked for the New York Times. He became famous for creating a series of one-panel cartoons showing a macabre family, doing often macabre things, pouring hot liquids on Christmas carolers, putting toy dolls in toy guillotines. Everything they did was dark, yes, but veered more towards silly than evil. Charles Addams lent his name to the originally unnamed family, and the Addams family was born. His work became a huge success, spawning a litany of cartoons, television and film adaptations, and even a Broadway musical. As one playwright once said, Charles Addams was a genius. He understood that Americans needed an antidote to Donna Reed. This is one family you don't have to worry about keeping up with. The playwright who said that was Paul Rudnick. 2. Paul Rudnick. The year is 1993. Paul Rudnick is a 35-year-old gay Jewish playwright living in New York City. His most successful play to date, Jeffrey, is enjoying a sold-out, critically acclaimed run off-Broadway. But Jeffrey was an unlikely hit. You see, Jeffrey is the story of a young gay man living in Manhattan who, fearing AIDS, swears off sex, then in a cruel twist of fate, meets Mr. Right, who happens to be HIV positive. It's a sex comedy about AIDS. The play is one of my favorites. It's funny, angry, and sad all at the same time. It completely acknowledges and articulates the awfulness of the pandemic at the time, but then goes to some silly, absurd, cartoonish places. There's a country western hoedown for AIDS. There's a self-help guru/charlatan who lectures devotees with a mix of toxic positivity and victim blaming. One character, Darius, is performing in Cats on Broadway and fantasizes that someday the whole cast of Cats will perform at his funeral, singing to the tune of Memory from Cats, "Darius, we all thought you were fabulous." My friend Hannah took me to see Jeffrey, and it was the first play I ever saw at the Orlando International Fringe Theater Festival. At that point, it was only in its 7th year, and it made a huge impression on me. However, little did I know, I had seen Paul Rudnick's work before. 3. Gary's Vision. The year is still 1993. Paul Rudnick is still a 35-year-old gay Jewish playwright living in New York City. Jeffrey is a success off-Broadway and Paul Rudnick's first film to actually have his name on it, about the Addams family, is starting to get critical acclaim. This wasn't Rudnick's first time writing a screenplay, but it was the first time he was getting credit and his sense of humor could be seen by a mainstream audience. To quote an Entertainment Weekly article on the matter, Rudnick's initial venture into the Hollywood mainstream, writing the original screenplay for Sister Act, was a holy terror. What was meant to be a campy, knowingly show-busy vehicle for Bette Midler was extensively rewritten for Whoopi Goldberg by Disney's script doctors. The irked Rudnick ultimately insisted on listing Joseph Howard as his screenwriter pseudonym for the movie. He was called in to punch up the jokes in the original Addams Family, but received no screen credit. So, Addams Family Values actually represents the first time a mass movie audience can appreciate his trademark sensibility in uncompromised form. And the movie he wrote was very, very uncompromised. If you're unfamiliar, the plot is simple. Gomez and Morticia have a new baby and need to hire a nanny. A literal, gold-digging black widow serial killer named Debbie applies to be the new nanny. She has a scheme to seduce Uncle Fester and inherit a bit of the obscene Addams family fortune after she kills him off. Wednesday and Pugsley catch on to what she's up to, so she sends them away to summer camp, where to say they don't fit in would be an understatement. Debbie finally shows all her cards, tries to kill off the whole family, but fails spectacularly. And the Addams family lives to be spooky another day. But wait, that synopsis completely glazes over all the things I love about this movie. Before we get into it, let's acknowledge the fact that it's named Addams Family Values. For those unfamiliar, family values became a dog whistle in the early 90s for conservative Christians and Republicans to refer to the queer community. If you were to turn on the news, you would hear them saying all sorts of things like
so many Americans for me, family comes first. When family values are undermined, our country suffers. All too often, parents struggle to instill character in their sons and daughters, only to see their values belittled and their beliefs mocked by those who look down on America. Americans try to raise their children to understand right and wrong, only to be told that every so-called lifestyle alternative is morally equivalent. That is wrong.
To name this Family Values was a direct wink to the idea that all families have values, but not all families are the same. And those families, our families, still have inherent value themselves. So let's go back through the plot piece by piece. Gomez and Morticia have a new baby, and at first, they don't gender the baby. It's a boy, it's a girl.
It's an Addams.
They finally name the baby Pubert and start referring to them with he, him pronouns only after we see him having either developed or drawn on a pencil-thin mustache. Later on, when upsets rock the family, the baby starts appearing unmacabre, cute, normie. The family is shocked at first and is concerned that the baby's one day going to grow up to be a normal, socially acceptable adult. They even try to pray it away. But they still love the baby and try to raise him the best they can. They even try reading him Dr. Seuss storybooks because that seems to be what he likes now, and they want to accept their kid for who he is. The fact that this is a direct inversion on what it's like to have a teenager go through a dark or spooky period, or to have a kid come out as queer, is not lost on most audiences. Next up, the literal gold-digging Black Widow serial killer named Debbie. Debbie is everything. Let me be clear, the character of Debbie is not a good person, but Joan Cusack plays her so well, so scheming, so seductive, so believable, that you almost forgive her. Because in our heart of hearts, haven't we all wanted a ballerina Barbie in a pretty pink tutu? And what did life give us instead? Malibu Barbie! That's not who we are. We're ballerina Barbie. Graceful, delicate. I should move on. Wednesday and Pugsley catch on to what she's up to, and so she sends them away to summer camp, where to say they don't fit in is an understatement. Okay, I've saved the best for last. Wednesday and Pugsley are the perfect comedic foil to everything that a private summer camp stands for. Outdoor rustic living, wholesomeness, team cooperation, and bonding with other kids of the same exact socioeconomic class and values as you. Led by the manipulatively cheerful Gary and Becky Granger, the camp calls themselves a place for privileged young adults.
'Cause that's what being privileged is all about!
There it is. Good. Wednesday and Pugsley are immediate outcasts. And they find a friend and possible love interest for Wednesday in Joel Glicker. All he wants to do is read some Stephen Hawking. There are some great one-liners, especially for anyone who's ever been othered. But where the movie really glows is when Wednesday finally agrees to sing and dance and play Pocahontas in Gary's vision. You see, the Addams kids are forced to perform a pageant play about the fictitious first Thanksgiving entitled Gary Granger's A Turkey Named Brotherhood. The songs in reality are written by Mark Shaman, with choreography by Adam Shankman. Years later, they'd work together on the movie musical version of Hairspray, but I digress. The show puts Pugsley in a gigantic turkey costume where he sings and dances, begging you to murder and eat him. The show also casts every rich Aryan girl at the camp as a pilgrim, and then casts every single unpopular kid who's either overweight, ethnic, or disabled as one of the quote-unquote savages. By the way, Gary and Becky Granger are both very pleased with themselves because of their Thanksgiving-themed diversity inclusion of both, quote, white meat and dark meat. Rudnick's dialogue has the Aryan pilgrims in the play list off a litany of petty insults about Native Americans, all played for laughs to the delighted rich parents in the audience. But then, when it's time for Wednesday to deliver her lines as Pocahontas, she flips the script. She delivers a deliciously scathing monologue about economic inequality, stolen land, and frankly, the continued slow-motion genocide of Native Americans in the 20th century. And because of that,
I've decided to scalp you and burn your village to the ground.
mayhem ensues while every marginalized kid takes over the camp, destroys the set, and acts out every cartoonish, adolescent revenge fantasy any kid who grew up being tormented has always dreamed about. And there, in Act 3 of the film, this movie solidifies itself as the best subversive yet mainstream Thanksgiving film of all time. It has the most angry, tongue-in-cheek, progressive things to say and feels 100% 2020, even though it was written almost 30 years ago. I think that's what I love about this movie. Paul Rudnick's writing fills an already visually beautiful sight gag and film noir-laden movie with some of the most pithy, nail-on-the-head verbal sparring you could ever ask for. All his work is like that. When I was looking back on his play, Jeffrey, there's a moment in the show where the main character is about to get mugged, and the guys threaten him with a knife, and Jeffrey says that he has weapons too. The guys ask him what he has, and he says, irony, adjectives, eyebrows. I feel that in my soul. If you've ever been othered, sometimes that's all you have to fight back with. So if you're feeling like Wednesday Addams at this Thursday's dinner, put this film on for your family and let all the irony, adjectives, and eyebrows in this film do the talking for you. As always, I'd like to thank all of my patrons for supporting me and making this film and all of my stuff possible. If you want to become a sponsor, you can at patreon.com/Logan Donahoo. Thank you especially to Christina Pines. By the way, if you feel really sassy, down below I put a few different little treats in the description down below. So if you want to look at some weird, fun little tangents or interesting things, including a drag queen named Jinkx Monsoon singing Debbie's monologue as a song, it's down below, all for you. Have fun. Happy Thanksgiving.